Hey everybody, welcome to the August edition of Dinner with the Devs, early access edition. I'm here with the directors for Until You Fall, the game that's going into early access next week. And so just before we introduce everybody, please feel free to use the live chat to put any type of your questions, your comments. Our Discord is also being monitored for questions for the Q&A today. And so we really want to hear from you. We want you guys to guide this conversation. So with that being said, we'll introduce our directors. We'll start that way and going on.
I'm Ryan, I'm the engineering director.
I'm Kirsten, I'm the producer.
Dwayne, marketing team.
Patrick, the lead combat designer.
And I'm Dave, the project director.
Cool. So yeah, early access next week, the 27th, that Tuesday.
Yes, that is next week.
That is next week.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Next week.
It came quickly.
It did.
Some say early.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like early into access. No. Initial thoughts.
We're ready.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Ready?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Hold on. No, it's been great to be running the alpha and getting the great feedback from that. And really, I'm just chomping at the bit to start seeing how people like the game and other ways we can start building on it. So just getting more folks in there and trying and swinging our neon swords.
A bigger pool of feedback will be super helpful, and I'm excited that we're working on the next release already.
Yeah. No, I'm stoked about that, and then hopefully we can just keep trucking.
Yeah, this is it's a very new thing for the studio to be doing early access this way and to really open up our alpha as much as we did. So it's been really cool to learn how to do that right. I'm excited to see the response that we get from early access and from PAX and everything.
Very cool. Yeah, so for some of our watchers who aren't aware, on our Discord we had a closed alpha program, and it started really small with about 5 to 10 people, 6 people,
Yeah,
and then about a month after we opened it up to almost 30 people, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what were some of the learnings that you got from the alpha testers?
Movement speed was too low.
Okay.
Yeah. Turns out
People don't like bugs. I was not expecting that. We got a lot of great feedback. People were able to find new ways to break the game. We have in-house testers that do a great job, but only players can break the game with their own special ways. So we got a lot of good feedback on that.
Yeah, the process, like Patrick said, we haven't really done this before. So the first 6, high five to you guys, because it was a little rough going. We learned a lot just as far as, reaching out and getting the keys to people and everything like that to be more streamlined. And then we did a second kind of wave to 5 players at the end there. And again, to your point, the testing and results we got from that testing were fantastic.
Yeah, and even process stuff like, oh, we're getting this feedback. How are we going to actually process the feedback in a way that doesn't make our hair fall out? So it's been great to actually kind of almost pre-game the early access with the alpha, because it's been like, oh, okay, we've never done this before, so let's fail with a small group,
Yep.
and then do better for round 2.
And for everybody that's doing streams and uploading videos to YouTube of the game, that's also been super helpful just to get more community input on what's actually happening with the game and watch how people play. So it's very helpful to have people streaming the game so that it's almost like we're doing a remote play test, so we can see what people are doing.
That's been great.
Yeah, it helps us figure out ways that we can make the game more fun, and helps us figure out ways we can make the game more fun to watch.
Make it break less.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, no, I agree. It was really fun to see how people interpreted their play, on with the content creators, how they use different weapons, how they strategize going from a husk to the knight to the captains. And I don't think every content creator that played the game got to the horror, at least that I saw. People struggled with the captain a lot, and I thought that was cool. I thought that was fun. Let's see. It's Blunix asks us how much does the game cost. We are going to talk about that in about 40 minutes. At 6:45, we're going to announce the game. I didn't tell you guys that. So we're announcing the price of the game at 6:45. So we got 40 minutes. Hang in there. So let's ask them a couple more questions in between. Let's see. We got a question from Discord. I'm curious about the social aspect of the game. Do you guys have a plan down for any sort of player-to-player interactive content? Or will there be multiplayer?
Probably not in the immediate future. Multiplayer was something we looked at early on, but then kind of intentionally moved away from, just because we wanted to make sure that the sword combat just felt good for one person. But we have talked about in the future, like some sort of leaderboards or a run of the week, that kind of thing. But there are absolutely no plans for it for 2019. And as we continue going into early access, we're going to be kind of evaluating and seeing what gets people excited into 2020.
Yeah, a lot of this project was really put together. Again, we were a small, really like an R&D team at first,
Right, yeah.
figuring out how to build a game like this and how to do a VR melee combat game with the pace of gameplay being as fast as it is. And I think that making the decisions early on that multiplayer would be something that we don't think about yet, that we just want to get the core gameplay loop for a single player game right and feeling good, and then do this early access where now we can really check ourselves on that and say, we like the way it is, but how is everybody else feeling about it? What are people most wanting from it? How would you want to interact? Like if we, apart from like a direct multiplayer game, do leaderboards sound fun? Do you want harder difficulties first? Is that kind of thing more exciting?
Focusing on single player also lets us put more effort into interesting abilities, interesting weapons, and things that would not necessarily work in multiplayer. So it keeps the space clear to do more interesting things in combat. If not everything takes double, triple, or quadruple the time to build that into a multiplayer feature. So you'll see as some of the abilities that release with the first release and abilities that you'll see in the subsequent releases, those things we can build and iterate on those faster when we're doing just this, focusing on what it's like for the player to fight against multiple enemies.
Very cool. So let's see. I got another question. So, oh yeah, we could talk a little bit about some of the weapons that the players will see whenever the game is launched. Blunix asks, will there be a bow or something for range? So let's start with what type of weapons or overall combat is in the game for those who are new to Until You Fall, and then you can kind of tackle that question about those range type weaponry or attacking.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Patrick, you probably have a better idea of exactly how many weapons are in the early access release. Like 6 or 7.
Yep, we're going to early access with 6. You get them unlocked the deeper you get into into the dungeon encounter. So periodically you'll come back and there will be new ones to buy and try out. We've got swords, axes, a couple of daggers at release, and a couple of one heavy longsword to play around with. And we are planning on having some of our early drops be additional weapons that we can't talk about quite yet, but there should be a bunch more coming soon after.
Cool.
And the goal with the game, since we're dual wield first, like we want to support alternate play styles, but sword in each hand is sort of the most vanilla way of playing the game. And melee focus is the main way to play the game. So right now and at launch there won't be dedicated ranged weapons, but there will be melee weapons that are all about using ranged attacks. And probably the closest thing we have to a ranged weapon right now is the Ritual Dagger, which is in the first early access release. That's all about charging up the weapon super, which is like a fireball style projectile that applies damage over time on anything it hits. And depending on the weapon that you combo with that and the kind of traits that you pick up during the run to make a build around it, there are some people that have dedicated builds all around getting supercharged and then spending it on throwing out a ton of soul fireballs.
Very cool. So even though it is melee focused, so the Linux question, there is some type of range attacks whenever you're using the traits and supers along with those weapons.
Yeah, and we're listening closely, and like crossbows and that kind of thing are a popular request, and we're definitely listening to that. We're just trying to figure out the right way to have it fit into the game so that it doesn't break it, since we want you to be mixing in ranged and melee combat and not completely ignore the melee aspect of the game.
Yeah, so much of the game is just about engaging with the enemy and blocking attacks and finding openings to take advantage of. Just making sure that whatever crossbow or whatever other weapon we try to add in can still fit into that ecosystem.
And you can feel awesome while you're using it. Like, I know that a lot of the early prototypes with that kind of thing, anything that has like a really long reload or something where you have to like put away your other weapon, like you don't want to actually have to crank a crossbow, because again, for us, we're trying to just get that sense of flow and rhythm in the game, so we don't want to break your rhythm with a dedicated ranged weapon. It just ends up being a little more clunky.
It's fun to play with the existing projectile weapons, the soul burn, the fireball, to be able to mix in blocking and fighting an enemy and then get enough charge and shoot it at an enemy that hasn't quite got to you yet, and being able to just kind of mix between close range and ranged. So that's the way that I like to play. The soul burn is my favorite super in the game. It's my favorite projectile. So there's definitely play styles that you can have that allow you to use those ranged attacks and mix it in with the melee. But we want people to get into that flow state where they're using their melee weapons and then using their supers sort of in that same pacing and not just hanging back and avoiding the action.
I think it makes for more interesting builds, right? Because I agree, that is one of my favorite supers. It is not my favorite weapon, right? I really like the heavy hitting weapons. So trying to, do I do this run without that, even though I really like it, or do I do some sort of combination of the two? And then while I'm in, I found a lot of times that I'm too melee, and then I'm overwhelmed, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I have this other thing. So I think it makes for a very interesting combat as well.
Cool. So we're talking about melee and how people play the game, or how you expect people to play the game. What are a couple of things that you are excited for people to experience in Until You Fall?
I mean, watching it on a stream is one thing, but actually being in the fight is another. And again, the way that the music drives you forward and kind of gets you involuntarily shaking your body and like, okay, I'm getting real antsy now. I don't know why. And then dudes are coming at you and you're fighting and it just gets real intense. It's just the first time seeing people play the game in person has always just been a delight, because for a lot of people it's this kind of visceral like, oh, I get it. I can hit dudes with swords. And then they just go ham. And so just getting people to even experience just the opening moments of the first combats, just kind of really just, I don't know, I'm stoked.
I love watching every time that somebody encounters a new enemy for the first time. Every single time somebody sees a new enemy, they're like, a boss! Like, you wait for the boss. But just the reaction and the idea that you see this new enemy, it's intimidating, you see these new attacks, seeing how quickly people are able to kind of unwrap that puzzle, learn what's happening, and then adapt the strategy. It's really fun to watch somebody die and think, there's no... That's dark. In the video game, it's really fun to watch somebody very immediately think like, I can't beat this enemy, and then dive in and then get over it in one turn and two extra tries, and then it's just this thing that's in the back of their brain now. It's locked down. They know how to get through it, and just the fact that we can keep throwing that at people as they're playing. That's the most exciting thing to watch.
Yeah, no, the player growth is excellent. It's amazing to see even an hour in how adept you can become at this game.
Yeah, I think I'm the most excited about the stuff that we're still working on now, because a lot of what's coming out as part of the first early access is really the part of the game where you learn what the basic enemy types are and what the basic enemy types do. And later on, the stuff that's getting released later really shows how that rhythm and the pace starts to come together. when you start fighting them in combinations and it's just a string of attacks. And once players get comfortable with that, and boy, you really get some of that nice choreographed Guitar Hero kind of feeling of it looks very impressive on screen to watch somebody that's been playing and really knows the enemy combos like the back of their hand. It's cool.
One of my favorite parts of playing myself, and I'm excited to see other people, is when you take the risks, right? You have those moments at the end where you get to choose your reward, and then you take risks of, well, I could do so much health because I think I got it, and then the next room either you do or you don't, and there's a really great feeling of kind of just in that 2-room run, that story that's being told of, do they have it? Do they have it? Oh, they might not. Oh, they got it. And then you have all the excitement. I remember a couple times playing, just being able to get that further, taking that risk, and it pays off. And then I got another room further. It feels really great, and it's always, I think all of us when we watch streams that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear us in the row being like, "Oh, he did it," or "They did it." And so seeing more of that, I'm really excited for.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember which streamer it was. I think it was Rage, who was just like on the close of death of fighting. I think this first encounter with the captain or something like that. It was fun to watch and cheer for. Yeah. Let's see, Corporal Capey, thank you for coming in and watching. They asked, do enemies have a sort of defined attack pattern?
As the person that wrote them.
They do. So they have a set of attack patterns that they switch between depending on how aggressive you're being. So there's some things that you have to be reactive and just know that the enemies can choose to do anything, but they're locked into smaller attack sequences that are usually about 2 to 3 attacks. And if you really get used to fighting those enemies, then you can start to see the telegraph and know that if this guy lifts his arm up like this, you're going to have to block in these 3 directions really fast. And then the harder enemies will use those same combos, but then they'll do 3 to 5 of those 3-hit combos back to back. And then it really becomes more on you to decide if you're going to try and play defensively, or if you're going to try and push through and break their guard, or use a super, or dodge out of the way and reset their combo counter and that kind of thing.
Very cool. Very cool. So, what I wanted to go back a little bit whenever, Dave, you mentioned the music. The music in the game is all original.
Yes.
Right? And so, I guess talk a little bit about maybe the story behind the music, if we got some help with it, but the overall, what are the feelings that is supposed to come out whenever you hear the music and you're fighting? And
so back, year and a half ago, maybe a year. Anyway, so when we were trying to kind of solidify what shape this game was going to be, we had an idea of what the art could look like, and so we had some cool character designs, and it's kind of like, okay, we have these disparate elements, but the main goal, the whole focus of this game has always been about hitting dudes. And you just need to hit the dudes and get into rooms to hit dudes and not feel bad about hitting the dudes. So really almost one of the pillars of the game became just kind of like you become a badass sword god. And how do we do that? How do we get you into combat? And so, one of the ways is probably through the music. It's just like, all right, games like Hotline Miami, there are plenty of shooters. I listen to like hardcore, not ska.
Tell us more about.
Well, okay.
Hardcore ska.
every stream, ska comes
Ska
up.
is not dead, folks.
We should have a boss named Scott.
Yes, Ska's Revenge.
Ska's Revenge.
Anyway, so point is, you listen to music that gets your blood going. You're like getting excited. You're pumped. And ska, third wave ska. Street Light Manifest. All right. But so it kind of became like, all right. So there's plenty of music that can do that, but what music do we feel as a group that would best exemplify, work with the art that we'd already kind of concepted, as well as just kind of like what do we think would be cool? And we tried a bunch of stuff. We tried some weird rock. I pitched ska. I swear I did. I tried. No one liked it. It's fine. But we kind of like tried some stuff. It's like, oh, this is cool. This is kind of neat. And then we had some synthwave tracks that kind of I picked out. And when we started listening to the first one, I think it was a Mega Drive or something like that. It was Mega Drive, and it was just like as soon as we started listening, everyone was like, oh,
There's
damn.
some really good like album art. Too,
Yeah,
that
it was
you
like
put up
this
that was,
grungy, like
Neon-y,
neon-y street corner thing, and it was just like, okay, cool. And the music was driving, and it was just like, okay, cool. All right, I feel like I'm cruising for a bruising. I'm ready for violence. And so it's like, okay,
I'm ready for violence.
you joke, but like that was the crux of trying to find out what soundtrack would make sense. And in a lot of ways, the synthwave drove a lot of the decisions about what the eventual art style would end up to be. Because it's kind of like, yeah, we've got these cool knights, we've got this cool sword fighting.
Grungy neon lights. That's
Yeah.
kind of part of the music.
Yeah, and so it was a kind of beautiful marriage of the two, where it's like, yep, the synthwave helps you get into the mood for violence and combat, and we have these cool glowy nights already, so let's just amp that up and have it kind of like raise to the same level that the music's at.
Mhm.
And so we started kind of trying to find references and find music that we got excited about and tried to fight with, like just kind of in the background. Like, all right, this feels right. Turns out that first Mega Drive song was actually too slow.
Mhm.
And so it's about finding the right BPM, about like, all right, yeah, what is the music that gets me to involuntarily bob my head and kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm ready, I'm doing this, let's do this. And I'm going to the rhythm whether I mean to or not. And then once we kind of found some good examples of that in Carpenter Brute, Perturbator, yeah, nailed it. And there's some other names I'm forgetting, but we kind of like looked at those, and Daniel Cohen, who was the composer for most of these tracks, just really found the sound, and the music turned out great.
I would say he found the sound and then even like took it to its own kind of our own genre.
Yeah, it's like our own
subgenre.
corner
Yeah.
of synthwave.
Because I think,
Sword waves, right?
Yeah.
That's what-
As Justin, our art director, would so kindly remind us.
it was really awesome. Like every week to kind of hear it evolve too, right? So he started out with the very basic, very simple, kind of almost copy paste of the examples we gave him, and then ended up, continuing to build and build and build on those. And so as you go through the game too, you can start to hear the music progress and kind of evolve as well. So and in the end, I think turned out to be something even better than the examples we ended up giving in the first place.
And the game with that, I feel like at every step, the game got more stylized with the music and with the art at the same time.
Yeah.
We started off with, we built the armor, we had the knights and everything, and then we started adding more and more stylized elements that just kind of matched how the music was evolving, and we ended up with neon glow inside, and then concept art that had bright colors in the background, and we ended up adding colors, and each tier you have more and more colors, and the music gets more intense. So there's definitely an interesting evolution to watch it from the beginning, to go from something that was more, I don't want to say realistic, but
It's got straight fantasy.
yeah, and then go to neon knights.
Yeah. No, it was this kind of weird arms race of like, okay, the music got more crazy, and so it's like, well, the art's kind of bad too, so the music kept going, and so it's kind of like, we kept drawing the line, and then we kept going over the line, and so we have to keep redefining.
And setting the tone for the story.
Yep.
And the backstory and Agatha's character, everything sort of followed after that music came in.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, Patrick, you mentioned the background or the story. For those new to Until You Fall, can you give just a little bit of a background of what the story is about? Like, who are you? Why are you going out and wrecking fools?
Sure. All right. Yeah. I mean, you want to do it? I can do it.
Oh, sure. Now this is, you can tell me if I've gotten it right or not.
Okay. Yeah. I'll sit here quietly and drink my water.
Watching, judging?
For us, it was trying to be a light touch with the story. So there's a lot more that hasn't been said because we just want to get you in there and get you swinging swords as quickly as possible. But what you find out or glean from Agatha is that you are woken up somewhere in the middle of a forest. You don't quite know where. You know that you are a rune knight, or you were a rune knight, and that something has happened. And all of the other knights in this place called Rokar have either been killed or gone crazy, and it's not super clear right now. And Agatha is your one friend in this world and is kind of leading you through things and taking you back to an old Rokari armory where you are sort of retrofitting it to be your home base while you build up new weapons and pursue a particular monster that I think she calls out by name. As
She calls it a horror.
Yep, the Aether horror that is corrupting the forest and resurrecting a lot of these fallen Rokari soldiers. And so this early access release is really focused on the Aether horror and hunting it down and trying to find out more about it. So you're pursuing this monster through the forest, fighting different kinds of Rokari unraveled along the way.
You did. Good
Yeah,
job.
that was it.
Yay!
I said all the right things.
You said all
I
the
did
things.
say all the right
That's
things.
good. The fun fact, I don't know if in the current release Agatha ever introduces herself as Agatha.
No, that's spoiler. There you go.
Yeah.
Her name's Agatha.
And yeah, it's not
Or just dropping
Yeah.
stuff today, people.
exclusive. Janet. Hot Janet as Reese King.
Yeah, sorry, Reese, it's Agatha, not Janet. But now you can say Agatha. So, yeah, Janet. Yeah. I love it. Love it. Or you can still say Janet. That's fine too. Yeah. Hey, you live your life, Reese. That's awesome.
Yeah, and if you're interested in knowing more about the story, let us know. So we'll put more of it in.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question from. They're all good questions.
Good cover.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going to butcher your name. Husin Goljan asks, how many people have been working on the game? So, I guess you could say, what's been the average,
Sure.
and then high, low,
I
whatever you
think
prefer.
at our kind of highest, our peak, we had about 30. And so we started off as a kind of smaller team, like Patrick was talking about, a little more R&D. Once we felt like we had the concept, we had some prototypes, then we ended up building the team, just a couple pivots here and there. And then the team just kind of continued to grow to the height of it being around 30, between 30, 35, I think closer to the 30 end, for probably 5 to 8 months. And then once we, just very recently, we started to kind of taper back down to the kind of more core.
Like 6 people.
Yeah, right now we're about 6.
Okay.
Yep.
Good deal.
And I guess for people that aren't familiar with the way that Schell Games works as a studio, is that we're over 100 people in the whole studio. But because Schell Games doesn't really do a lot of hiring and layoffs, we try to avoid that as much as we can. Everybody's working on a bunch of different projects. So our core team started off as really like research and development, just like 5-6 people that were exploring this idea of melee combat in VR, and can we do that? Can we make it fun? And can we make you not barf when we're doing that? And, it was many months spent on that.
Sure.
And then once we got the green light and we went into production, then we went up to about 14 people, and then up to about 20 people, and then up to about 30 people, as people became available to finish up their current projects and then help us. And so then, as we started to try and lock things down and stabilize the game and optimize the game for our early access release, some of those people have gone on to other projects, and they may come back onto our project as we start getting feedback and then making plans and fleshing out our roadmap for the kind of content that we're going to be building during early access.
Good
So
deal.
everybody's still around. So we've got like,
They're not dead.
yeah, we've got 30 people in our Slack channel that are still putting in all their opinions on their brainstorming meetings and things. So everybody's in the wings still.
Good stuff. On the music note, Corporal asks, will there be a original soundtrack that we players can get a hold of?
Boy, I hope so. There's still some work that needs to be done with mixing the tracks and basically just getting our ducks in a row about how we actually distribute it. But we certainly want to. We just have no official plans just yet.
Very cool. Jacob, good to see you, man. Well, one of our regulars. He asks, what's the target platform for the game?
No, you go.
We're launching on the Steam store, and we'll be supporting at launch for early access the Rift, the Rift S, the Vive Pro. We plan on adding support, explicit support for the Index, and really anything with OpenVR at that point. So the major VR platforms are what we're launching for PC-based platforms.
There we go. Cool. So, what was I just going to ask? So whenever we were just talking about the story, we were talking about the soundtrack. Oh yeah. So with early access and with those platforms, whenever you say that we're going to support things like that, Index is going to be at the launch of early access, or shortly after, or sometime in 2019.
Shortly after. The first planned release we have is where we're going to be adding support for the Index.
Okay. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited just to see how excited people are to play it. One of the things that we're doing, we're going to PAX West in Seattle, August 30th through September 2nd. We're part of the Indie Mega Booth, and so it's a great event. It's our first time at PAX West. We've been at PAX East a couple of times with other games, but this is the first time we're showing Until You Fall to the public, and I think a couple of you are coming. So what excitement or what things are you looking forward to in the showing of players at PAX West?
Build that hype.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to get just more people through and experiencing what they can of the game while they're there. So there's nothing like live play testing, right? So just being able to do more of that, higher volumes, but also get people excited about the game. And it will be available at that time. So
Yeah.
It's fun to watch people play.
it is.
And that's something that on a conference floor, if there's visibility into the play space, that's something that's always fun to see. Because the game, one of the things that we focused on in developing it is a sort of a choreographed combat where we want to make the gameplay work best if the player is actually striking poses and making large movements. So watching somebody play this game, if you don't see what they see, if you don't see a screen or something, you probably will just be interested. Like, what are they doing over there? So it's fun to watch people play, and hopefully that's something that the conference will show.
Yeah. We'll just make sure that no one accidentally gets
Yeah.
destroyed by someone.
That happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, no, in our row, we're developing the game. It's a very dangerous place to walk.
You walk down the road like this.
I'm crawling on the floor.
Yeah,
Are we caught through?
I mean, just going off what Kirsten was saying too. Like, there have been enough people in the studio that have told me anecdotes about, like, yeah, no, I showed my friend Until You Fall this weekend, and they're like, oh wow, I might actually want VR. And there've been enough of those anecdotes. I'm like, okay, maybe like people will like this thing, and it's just going to be exciting to have people be able to actually try it for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm most excited about. I'd like to just talk to people after they play and see what they're excited about and see the kind of potential, hear about the kind of potential that they see in the game. You know, both for our early access and
Beyond, yeah.
yeah, just because this is a weird game. There isn't a lot out that's trying to do exactly this kind of gameplay.
Yeah, that question of what's next is like, I'm very excited to like continue adding on to this and tinkering with it, which is why I guess I'm a game designer. But I don't know. I think we have a very good foundation, and going along and figuring out how to continue building this thing up in a way that everyone can like is just really exciting.
Yeah, and I'm interested in watching people play as well, and because we're going to be right next to the mini booth, so we're booth 846. So you can look in your PAX West app, and also it'll be under Schell Games whenever you're looking through the exhibitors. And so we'll be right next to the mini booth, right across from the Indie Mega Booth headquarters, and so it'll be pretty exciting just to be there. It's one of the bigger PAX events, so I think that there's like Kirsten was saying, build that hype. And we got all types of swag that we're going to give away at the events as well. So
Real swords.
not real swords. The whole weapon policy for PAX is kind of tight.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty clear.
yeah.
Bases only. They don't.
Yeah,
No blade
yeah,
weapons.
oddly enough, yeah.
Didn't
But,
say anything about Saltburn.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're bringing actual Aethers now.
Flying with magical fireballs is not really
Yeah.
the way with these days.
Yeah, it is. Something slipped through. I don't think the fireballs will though. But hey, someone can hope, right?
Yeah.
But we will have thunder swords. We'll have thunder swords. We'll have about 1,000 of them. So that'll be cool. Maybe. Okay. Thought Bubble TV asks, this game looks absolutely spectacular, and I was just wondering whether the team took inspiration from other games currently on the market.
I wish Justin was here because he could talk more about it. I know, again, so much of the visual style is kind of driven by the music and kind of that 80s pastiche. It was a weird line to walk because it was kind of the thing where, like, yeah, we wanted to evoke this kind of neon hellscape, this kind of neon 80s vibe without the camp necessarily.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing, is like, you need to feel cool and awesome, but we also don't need to be constantly like, hey, remember the 80s? Remember that movie or that TV show? And so it was one of those things where trying to walk that line was kind of rough for us, because I think even early drafts of the music were also kind of just like, ooh.
It was I think a constant point of discussion, right? Of like, did we cross the line here? Does this feel good? Is it too much? So yeah, that was definitely kind of a bar that we always were up against to make sure. I do also think a lot of the evolution came from as we evolved the character and the enemies that you fought, right? And having them fit in a world that made sense. So they very much, I think, evolved together and played off of one another.
Yeah, I think mechanically, we took a lot from a previous project that we had worked on, and a lot of us here had worked on at Schell Games. It was Jedi Challenges, and that's where we got the chance to prove out a lot of the core mechanics in augmented reality. And then the R&D that went into this project was figuring out how we can do that in virtual reality and incorporate movement, incorporate dashing, while preserving all of the things that made Jedi Challenges fun.
We played every VR game we could find.
Yes.
It is true.
There's an interesting thing about the VR market is that since it's still so young, there's still a lot of there's emerging standards. How do people like to do movement? How do you handle certain types of things? But there's still a lot that's open. So we played a lot of games just to see, completely unrelated games, just to see how are they handling movement? What do they do when you try to push your head through a wall? How do they do hand interactions? How do they handle physical objects? So we played just about everything in the VR space just to make sure we were trying to pick the best of everything that worked for our game. And then outside of that, games completely outside of VR, just roguelites.
Yeah.
And hot plates come up a lot, just our outer loop, which is whenever I'm on a plane, that's the game that I play, is hot plate. So the idea that you complete a level, you can pick one reward, every now and then you get a trade-off reward, you go into that next level, and then this loop kind of continues, and you can up some meta level updates or upgrades. And yeah, that was also, those types of games were a big influence on how we made that outer loop work.
Yeah. And Slay the Spire was also a big inspiration.
Slay the Spire, FTL to a degree, but like it's more, again, we were just trying to play any sort of rogue and roguelikes and roguelites, because there are three different things. But yeah, I think the main thing, like, we went for roguelite especially because rogue and roguelikes felt too punishing, because at least with a roguelite you have made some meta progress where it's like, yep, I'm earning a currency that lets me get a new sword that makes me stronger for the next attempt. Whereas in most other games, you just completely lose your progress. That felt too punishing, at least to me. And finding good examples of like, hey, how do we give you enough power gain between runs without blowing up the whole rogue loop, but still be meaningful enough that you are engaged to continue going. Like, what is a good enough carrot, but not too big of a carrot?
I remember it still happens now, but there was a couple months there where almost every week, every other week, it'd be like, hey, have we looked at this game? And so there's just a constant like, nope, let's put it up on a shared computer, let's all check it out. We did a couple team lunches where we tried to play some of these games as well. So we were checking them out pretty hardcore.
I also feel like somebody mentioned Hotline Miami already, but just that obviously the game isn't much like Hotline Miami, but the idea of doing these sort of micro bursts of sort of intense movements, like looking at a space, looking at an encounter, seeing a couple of enemies, and then dashing in and doing a bunch of really fast movements and trying to perfect that before you dive into the next one, has the same sense of what you do in Hotline Miami.
Yeah, a little bit super hot too. Like there's kind of like it's all about this execution.
Mm-hmm.
We played a lot of games.
Yeah.
All of
Forget
them.
about
I think
that,
we
yeah.
finished it. I think we finished games.
Yeah, all of
We
them.
finished games.
We just went to Wikipedia entry for games and started from the top.
No, that's a good point because the VR market is still growing, and what you guys are doing are different than with some of the games out there. So let's talk a little bit about that, and maybe you could, Ryan, talk a little bit about how you guys approached movement in the game, the fast movement, slow movement, and how you tried to make sure that movement didn't get people sick in VR.
Movement in VR is something that I really think that it's becoming increasingly popular, that there's some way of moving around besides physically moving your body. And we wanted to make sure that you could play this game if you're standing at a 5 meter by 5 meter space, if you're standing at a tiny space where you can't move around, if you're sitting and you can't actually get out of that chair. We wanted to make sure that people could play this game no matter what their play space was. But also a big part of this is navigating the combat arena and making sure that you can choose when to engage the next group of enemies. For us, we knew that we wanted to have some way of controlling the movement, so we used the thumbstick. The left thumbstick in the game allows you to move around freely, and we have the vignetting technique. It's been used in a lot of VR games, so you can disable it if you're not prone to motion sickness. I'm very prone to motion sickness. So the thing, when we started this, I said, I don't want to work on movement because I don't want to have to be sick every day. And I was working on movement, and I was sick every day, and which got me to kind of want to build these features in faster and getting to the point where I can play very comfortably now. The vignetting almost acts like a little bit of blinders, and you can control how much it's there if you have it on at all. And it tricks your brain into feeling almost like you're not physically being lied to about the movement. The world isn't actually moving, your character is, and it works really well, and other games have used that technique. We also allow the player to do quick dashes to jump into and out of combat. And when you do quick movements, this was another technique that VR games use a lot. Usually, for almost everybody that we've play tested with, those quick movements are not causing motion sickness because they happen over such a short period of time. It's almost like a teleport. And then physically walking in your space is something that we allow, and we tackled that in a way that I haven't seen many games do, which is if you try to push your head through a wall, will actually push your entire play space back, and it feels like that wall's solid. And there's in most of the combat, that's something that is not an issue. You're in an open space, you don't find yourself walking into walls much, but it helps keep you in that play space and in the world. Like the environment is really there for your character, and it kind of makes it feel like all the walls are solid, and you can't just run away by walking through a wall.
How much of that week did you spend pushing?
Oh, it's great. When if you look at it in a row, you'll just see people going like this all day with a VR headset on. Like, oh, you need to
Flailing their arms.
So yeah, trying to test pushing your face through a wall for 40 minutes straight, just that's game
It's
development.
true, yeah. It happened. I was there.
That's some of the fun part. Well, the fun and the terrible parts about VR game development is that it's all the Wild West all over again. We're trying to figure out the right way to build this stuff. We're in constant communication with the VR gaming community in general about what should the standards be. There's a lot of games that are trying out different things and sort of putting out their ideas of what they think the right standards are.
Yeah.
And because it's so expensive and there's such a level of detail that you have to deal with in VR across everything, like the gameplay mechanics, the art, that we're still trying to figure out what the right shortcuts are that you can get away with and which ones you can't.
Yeah, no, I don't get that much VR sickness, so it's fun to be able to try all the different movements. I love the dashing aspect of it, and that you could also use the dash as part of your attacks is really cool too.
That's interesting. The dash was originally something that we just wanted players to have to get into action quickly, and we saw it as just a movement thing, just for getting there. We didn't, have it be a real mechanic in the game. And then every single person that used it wanted to feel like they shoulder checked the enemy. So eventually, we kind of turned that into it's a movement and it's a little bit of a stun and damage on the enemy.
Yeah.
It all feeds back into that feeling like a badass. It's like, yeah, and it's like
Everything you do hurts something.
right. You are made of swords. So you're not just a regular knight that can, run into combat. You're a knight that can almost teleport and just shoulder check the dude so hard that they fall backwards.
All right, guys, it's time. It's 6:45. We told you already. Time flies when you're having fun. Aww. All right. Price of the game. Price of the game. Who wants to say it?
I don't know what it is.
Oh my God.
It hasn't been announced yet.
Kirsten, take it away.
Oh my gosh. So the price of the game will be $19.99.
Mm-hmm.
Except,
Yep, we can say it.
except Dave.
We will be having a launch discount for the first week.
Mhm.
It's 20% off, so I believe that the math checks out to be $17.99. That's right, yeah. We'll be doing a 20% discount for the first week, so people that jump in early, the earliest of accesses.
The earliest of early access.
Yes. We just want people to be able to get in and enjoy the game as soon as possible, so just hop in.
Cool. And then a question that we are more than likely going to get. So when the game goes out of early access, will the price increase?
The answer is probably. It's far enough away right now that it's still up in the air. We do think that we're going to be adding enough content to the game that it's likely that we'll increase the price when we leave early access. But with early access lasting well into 2020, maybe, yeah, not sure yet.
Yeah, but I think it's nice to be able to give, especially the early access, that lower entry to trying out the game, working with you guys to figure out what feels good, what they can have direct input into the game by going into the Discord and talking with you guys, showing footage, screenshots of what they're doing. So I'm really happy that that's the decision that the studio made.
Yeah, no, I'm super stoked about early access. I think we have built a lot of this game, and a lot of this game's structure was designed to be scalable and find ways to hey, how do we add cool mechanics to the core, this nugget that we've shown to a mirror finish. This metaphor's fault, just getting away from me.
The game's gonna be house shiny nugget.
Yeah, shiny. You heard it here first, folks. $20 for a shiny nugget.
Until you call the shiniest of nuggets.
Yeah.
I think we just thought of a new weapon.
The shiny nugget. It's 48.
Wow.
That's Aether modes, I guess.
Yes. Get it right.
I know. I corrected myself. So please, you heard it here. This is the first time that we've announced the price of the game, $19.99 with the launch discount of $17.99. Please continue with your awesome questions, guys. We're checking both the YouTube live chat, Twitter as well, so more than both, multiple, in the Discord, in the Discord. So put your questions there so we can continue talking about it. So the reception of the game in the studio as well has been pretty cool, because as Patrick mentioned, Schell Games is about 100, and I think we're up to 125 people now. And so there aren't that many, a lot of people in the studio that get to see your day to day, and until we have our own little demo days or play tests. And it's cool to see, and you guys can talk more about this for the people we've shown inside the studio and those outside about not just the excitement of the game itself, but the kind of things we're doing in VR that's just different.
Yeah. No, I mean, following up I Expect You to Die with a game that's completely different. I mean, and like, again, that was kind of the intent. It's like, hey, how do we have this cool sword fighting mechanic. How can we take it to VR? Also, let's really like take a second look at this movement thing. Like, is there a way to do this? Because it feels like we were at the point where we're just kind of like pushing against the boundary. It's like, okay, there has to be a way to just kind of like get over this hump of no movement in VR.
Yeah, moving around in VR is a hot topic for the studio because there's a lot of intense discussion that happens anytime you talk about splitting the game into different games, and it was a goal of Until You Fall from the very beginning that even if you need different options for like different levels of VR comfort, that everybody is playing the same game so that we can someday have those leaderboards and those direct comparisons, that everybody is playing under the same rules and conditions, and how can we make that all work and be fair. And it was probably the first 3 months of development of the project was just solving movement in a way that everybody was happy with, like the people that didn't get motion sick, people that got motion sick a certain way, because everybody that does get motion sick gets motion sick for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't like rotation, some people don't like fast movement, some people are fine with everything but strafing.
Yeah, no, and the other thing too is that people tend to also develop VR legs. Like, they actually get less sick the longer you're in it, so we constantly have to find new people to subject our movement schemes to.
I think I'm better, but yeah, there was even, when we were doing gameplay footage for the trailer, I had to opt out. I was on the sidelines just commenting because I have not been able to. You've been able to start to play without vignetting.
I don't. I still like to have it on. I turn it down, but the vignetting still helps. Like, when I turn it off, that's when I can see, like, okay, I don't know how long, but I can play infinitely, which I can't theoretically test, but I can play for 6 hours a day, which is very close to infinity with the vignetting.
Yeah, and I can't. I still have to have it on. Not the most aggressive, but I can't by any means turn it off.
Yeah.
I'm still pretty susceptible.
For the trailer footage, we did need to turn it off, so it was kind of a test for a lot of people. It's like, all right, who's getting in now? Oh.
It's the nice thing is though that the people like us who get motion sick, we're not at a disadvantage from the people. It's not like I'm not being discouraged to move. It's not that I'm going to change my play style for it. I can still have the same strategies. You can choose to be a player who wants to plant in place and just wave your axes around, or you can still choose to be the player that's dashing with daggers, because I want to be the dagger build. I want to have daggers that suit soul burn, and just move around the battlefield really fast. And I can do that even though I get motion sickness when I sit on a waterbed.
And that's part of it. There's a story there.
Yeah. We'll tell that off camera. Yeah.
That's part of why the dash ended up being a mechanic. Like, we came up with it as one of our movement modes, and people were calling it a teleport. And we don't want this to be, this is what you can use if moving around makes you sick. We want everybody to do a little bit of movement for fine control, and then the dashes for big engagements and getting the initiative on an engagement and actually turning it into a metered resource. So we ended up probably putting about a month and a half just working on getting the dash to feel right, and getting it to the point where it was a combat mechanic. And then we put it in early access, and everybody called it a teleport. So it's a complete success.
But it's an interesting build angle you can put together depending on the weapons that you use and the upgrades that you select at the end. You can have a build where you can dash all the time and have a lot of dashes, or you can have a build where your dash does a lot of damage and recharges slower. And there's just a lot of interesting ways of using that, of turning that one started out to be a movement mechanic into this extra dimension of how a player can decide to play the game.
Yeah, and I think all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the movement, like the big goal for us was not to exclude anyone that really wanted to play this game, because like it was the kind of thing where we want anyone to be able to feel like a badass and get in there and swing swords. And if the game makes half of the people that own VR feel sick, then like
Defeats its purpose.
yeah, it kind of defeats the purpose. And like we just want anyone and everyone to be able to play this game.
We do another interesting thing, which is we normalize your height. So if
Yeah.
you are 3 feet tall or 7 feet tall, you'll be eye to eye with the same enemy. I think you're eye to eye with the knight, or maybe the husk. So we want to make sure that we have control over how intimidating size-wise an enemy is up against you. So we scale everything to make sure that it should feel the same. When you walk into an enemy that is all of a sudden 2 feet taller than you, it's not that it's 4 feet taller than short people. You just have this great moment where everybody has that same
It's like, oh dang.
Oh, yeah.
same response. Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
That's funny. Jim asks, are swordplay, we might need some additional explanation, Jim, are swordplay tactics or just timed swings? So I guess, is the swordplay more tactical, or are you timing your swings accordingly? Which I guess could be tactical, but
Yeah, I guess the way that I interpret that question anyway, and tell me if I'm wrong, is how much do like actual sword fighting tactics assist you in the game
gotcha.
versus how much is it tactics that are specific to our game but not authentically sword fighting versus how much is it just waggling your controllers around because you're not really holding swords. And
You're not?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry you had to find out this way.
So soon before launch.
Yeah. So the 1999 does not come with real swords.
Yeah.
Sorry.
However, if you send me,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We can make it happen.
Yeah.
No, we can't. Okay.
It's close. So we did take a look at a lot of actual sword fighting techniques when we were trying to decide on the combat. And we had some builds that were much more technical and then scaled them way, way back because we wanted to create the feeling of melee combat. So no, we're not trying to be historically accurate. We're not trying to do fully simulated swords. And we are teaching you very much like in a Beat Saber, a DDR kind of way. If you hold your sword exactly here, you will block, we promise. If you slash your sword exactly like this, you will hit, we promise. But we've also tried really hard to make sure that the gameplay does have its own tactics and its own learning curve, and that you can't just waggle your swords around. So you are absolutely rewarded for bigger swings, and there are a lot of different builds and a lot of different strategies, ranging from very defensive to very offensive, very mobile to very like stand your ground, like Ryan was saying. And we haven't like pre-thought of all of those things. A lot of them have been emergent, just when you put enough traits and interesting weapons and making sure that the weapons have different fighting styles, that builds and weapon combinations work together naturally well, and you'll get strategies that shake out of that. So I'm excited to see what strategies people come up with or what strategies people start to ask for once we hit early access. And that's the kind of thing that I'd very much like to be responsive to and keep an eye on. So
Yeah,
tell us if you can just play this game by waggling. We don't think it's possible right now, but
we've been wrong before.
If people feel like there's a play style that they want, that's the type of thing that we can always build towards. So if people say, I really want to play, what's happened is a lot of people on the team have the play styles that they want. People want to be the rogues, they want to have the double daggers, people want to be the large weapons, and we're able to use that to build our the weapons and the mechanics. So if people are playing and they have something they want, you want to hear about it. Yeah.
But it is definitely meant to be a game that's got some depth to it, and it is a game that can scale pretty steeply in difficulty, like even beyond what we'll have in for early access. Things can get going very, very fast, and I'm excited again to see how people are playing the game. Yeah, not just next week, but in 3 months or 6 months, once people really get the hang of the mechanics and the pace and the enemy movements. You really, really can sort of floor the gas pedal on the pace of combat and have everything keep up. because we're using those simple rules the way that Guitar Hero or Beat Saber would.
Yeah, I was gonna say we are to sword fighting as Guitar Hero is to playing guitar.
Yeah.
It's more like you're playing 5 instruments at once.
Yeah.
One for each enemy.
Yes, and the instrument's a sword. And
Oh,
Here we go.
okay.
Next question.
Yeah. I think that's safe. Pretty safe to move on. Yeah, so Jim clarified his question. I think you nailed it. Yeah, like how do you swing swords against enemy swords, or do you avoid shields with your weapon? But I think you kind of answered that.
Yeah, I guess like really quick, like our basic verbs. If you're in place, you can block attacks, which will reflect a little bit of damage. You can swing attacks, which will be your chip damage.
Mhm.
And again, like the quality of your swing affects that. Like if you just do a little waggle, it won't respond at all. So you sort of have to perform. The action economy is all in your hands and where you can move your hands. And the bigger you can move your hand away from a block point and then swing in for an attack, even against an enemy's guard, the more damage you'll do. And it's up to you to sort of judge if you've got enough time to pull that off before you need to block again.
Mhm.
And then dodging for in place, like avoiding heavy attacks and keeping you mobile. And then between blocks, hits, dodges, and the dash, which is just a straight up reposition, which can, be your get out of jail free card if you want to use it defensively, but is on a meter, makes up the bread and butter of the combat. And then everything else, the traits and the supers and the special abilities that the enemies throw at you layered on top of that.
Yeah, the combat revolves all around wearing down the enemy's guard to a point where you can basically reveal these weak points that you then strike to deal damage to their health, which does not regenerate. And so during combat, you have this push and shove, this give and take. That's what I was looking for.
There we go.
Push and shove.
Push and shove, keep pushing and shoving. Yeah, you have this give and take of enemies are coming at you, you're blocking, you're defending, you're trying to get attacks of opportunity in to lower their guard. Other enemies are coming in, and so it's kind of like, oh, do I keep focusing on the one that's jumped away, or do I focus on this new enemy? But eventually you try to wear them down, reveal their critical weak points, and then you just try to take out their health.
And then the way the enemies play introduces a new strategy where we have enemies that are a little more elusive, and sometimes you want to chase them down and take care of them so that they can't throw projectiles at you.
Yeah.
So as soon as you feel like you've figured out how enemies work, we throw another one at you. You have to figure that one out.
Yeah, a lot of our enemies will start to break the rules, and a lot of your supers let you break the rules back at them. So you'll get things that can suddenly deal health damage through guard, or stun enemies, or just deal a crap load of guard damage all at once.
That was the original, I think our original pitch with supers was these are the things, like there's this game that you've learned, and then the supers let you break the rules. The supers are the things that we're saying. The player has like these ultimate powers here that they can just do damage right through guard. They can knock back all the enemies and a bunch of other cool things.
That brings them in place. It's the super cool things that kind of break the rules, I think was the original pitch.
Yeah.
Hence,
That's the
supers.
in-game name. Please upgrade your super cool thing and kind of breaks the game.
Getting all of that on the interface. Well done.
Yeah,
guys.
no, we really did a lot of work.
If you're curious about all the supers that the team is talking about, you can go to the About page, so untilyouFall.com/about, and you can see all the different types of supers that are in the game. We really try in all the weapons, the enemies as well, so you really get to know a little bit more about the ecosystem in the game. So I'm going to have a wrap-up question, and so get your questions in, and before they answer the wrap-up, so my wrap-up question is for you guys to think about, because we do have a couple of questions, so get them in now. The end, I want you guys to give one good reason why people should buy the game. Why should they buy the game in early access? Okay, and each answer needs to be different. So come on.
Who's going
Yeah.
first?
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to introduce our live chat moderator, Allie. So Allie will decide which one of you four will go first and answer the question. So it is not on me. So that's good. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So Allie will go through these questions. Feel free to add whichever more are in the live chat, and then you get to decide who answers first. Okay, so we got Corporal. He has they have a couple questions. Will the blockable attacks be dodgeable altogether? Also, really enjoying the stream. Good job. So thank you. But we'll also answer your questions. Will blockable attacks be dodgeable altogether?
Right now, no. If an attack is blockable, then you have to block it. And if an attack shows up as a dodge, then you have to dodge it. We have talked about and we've played with a couple of different ways to interpret that, because under the hood, anything can be a block or a dodge. But that's definitely something we want to get your opinions on in early access.
And you can, when we say dodge, dodge is an actual action where you stay close to the enemy and actually move your head or body out of the way, but you can also dash away from the attacks. And spend a dash to not have to dodge it, to not have to block it, so that there's always options to just try to avoid the attacks.
Yeah, since you always do have free range of motion, if you can move your character out of the way fast enough, you can dodge any attack in the game, period, the end. So nothing's guaranteed to hit you or scripted to hit you. But you don't get to pick if you are going to dodge, like duck in place instead of blocking an attack right now.
Cool. Let's see. Another question from Corporal. Will the player be able to do fancy attacks, such as spins, that even if they don't affect damage, at least are aesthetically pleasing to feel, or aesthetically pleasing or feel cool to do?
You are the controller. It's VR. You can do what you want, and we're tracking your controller. So we have play styles where people are fighting any way that they want. We have people that do windmill arms. It gets you so far, and then you have to start thinking some strategy. But yeah, you can, if you put your arms out and you spin in place. You got to be careful with the headset cable. That's usually we're not liable for anything that happens. But you can build your own style with whatever physical movement you want to do. You can do.
Yeah, and damage in the game is based off of how much distance the weapon is traveling at speed before it strikes an enemy. So a spin attack could be a great way to do a heavy hit against an enemy. I'm not going to recommend it tactically because you find out pretty quickly why spin attacks aren't that strong in melee, since they hit you when your back's turned. If you can stun them, if you can set up for it, absolutely. I'm really excited to see what people do.
You can hit and block enemies that are not in front of you too. So if there's an enemy behind you, and you're like, you can hit enemies outside of your field of view, and that's kind of a fun thing when you have 3 enemies and you're right up in front of you, and you're focusing on one, and you just kind of reach out. Especially when you kill an enemy off screen or block an enemy off screen. That's a really cool feeling.
Yeah, there are plenty of ways to showboat in this game. You can either look ridiculous or try to look as cool as you want. Again, windmill, the windshield wiper is a fairly popular one.
I think Rage was playing with his Maul saber
his Darth Maul saber setup where he had both controllers at the ends of the stick, and doesn't look great for your arms in game, but you could just swing them around and be crazy. Not a Jedi, because we're not Star Wars, but an off-brand Jedi. Legally distinct.
That's fair. Okay, so looks like we got time for our wrap-up question, and Allie has chosen Kirsten to go first. And then, Kirsten, you could choose which way to go. So you could go to Ryan and go to Patrick after you.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, give me one reason why people should go out and get Until You Fall on August 27th.
Addicting, I guess. Do I get to?
You can explain your reason.
No, right.
Just one.
Yeah, Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, everybody.
I think the game is super addicting, right? And then I do love a game that secretly burns some calories that on the end. So, I've definitely put down the headset and been just kind of gross and slightly exhausted, but wanting to be like, okay, take a sip of water, get back in. So I find it very addicting, and personal competition also helps and add into that addiction. So,
Which one?
Ryan.
Why to buy the game? Why would you buy the game on
On
August 27th?
August 27th. Yep.
Because it releases on August 27th.
Worse.
I would say
That's an engineering answer.
the
Yeah.
best reason is because you can be part of the early community, and that's something that's really important to us to get the people who are playing earlier. The earlier you play and the earlier you give feedback, the more likely and the easier it is for us to respond to that feedback and start bending the game towards the will of the crowd. We really want to see how people play it. We want to see what sort of things people are looking for, and if everybody's asking for certain features, that's definitely the type of thing that we're going to be influenced by. So, the reason to buy it right away is so that you can be a part of the development team. Really.
Sure. All right, now it's my turn. I think you should get it as soon as possible because the power fantasy. I have not played a game that quite makes me feel like such a badass as this. And it feels weird to say that because it feels like we're tooting our own horn. But I've played many games.
The game I'm working on
It's
makes
so
me feel
good.
awesome.
I feel great. I love my ideas.
Right ahead and horn too.
Yeah. No, but it's
Because you have the debug commands.
It's true. I cheat. No. I'm real good, guys. No, but again, so much of the development of this game has been around making you feel awesome, and it has been such a joy to watch naive players come into the game and, again, just have that moment of realization, like, I am a badass. I can do this. And it's that kind of like roller coaster of emotion of, this is impossible. I can never do this, to eventually overcoming it and be like, I am a god. And then the next bigger things, they're like, oh no. So yeah, and again, just because it's in VR, because I am the one swinging the weapons and I'm the one blocking and attacking, there's just this feeling of presence and power that you have playing the game that I just have not felt in other titles.
Patrick.
It's $2 cheaper than it'll be a week later.
The reason? $2.
$2.
$2.
It's a difference. It's a difference. Cool. All right.
Hey, hold on.
You have a serious?
You didn't go for the obvious one. That's on you.
Yeah, okay.
I've been harping on the speed for the last hour, but I really think that the pace of the combat is what makes the game special to me. It's definitely the thing that I am hoping gets out there that more VR titles really try to chase down. That if you make smart choices about what exactly the game is, once you get past the novelty of being in VR and then just build that path for people to be able to practice at it and get faster at it, I think that where the game is going to be in 5 months is going to be really amazing to see. And if you start practicing now, you'll be able to play at that speed. Whenever that happens. Yeah, brought it back. Yeah, nice. Also the $2.
$2.
I guess I'll go too because nobody said it. I know. No, I think the reason why players should go out, buy the game August 27th is because the team has really tried hard they try hard. No.
We try.
Yeah, they try. No, the fact is that some of the answers the team have for the questions in VR are something that the VR community hasn't seen yet. The movement is different. The way that you're swinging weapons and connecting with the enemies is so cool. And like to Dave's point, you feel so powerful. And so it's just a different game that you won't really find in VR right now. And so to be one of the early players in something brand new would be super cool to do. So do that, buy it, be super cool. So that's it.
Like you.
Yeah. And we'll like you, and I hope you like us. So I hope you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Oh, you see how I can just roll that in.
Nice.
Yeah. So be sure to follow us on our social channels that we're on. Twitter with Schell Games and Until You Fall VR. We're on Facebook Until You Fall, Instagram Until You Fall VR, or Until You Fall Game. You can find us both ways there. Join our Discord, discord.gg/Until You Fall. Again, yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be back with Dinner with the Devs next month in September, towards the end of that month as well. We'll announce what that topic is going to be in a week or two. We are going to be at PAX. We have a bunch of other events too where we're going to be showing the game, and those announcements will be coming soon. So I know, I'm sorry. But we're going to be at PAX. I can tell you that August 30th to September 2nd, booth number 846. So make sure you download the PAX app as well. You'll see our fancy mobile ad, and if you say the hashtag that's there on the ad, we'll give you some more swag. The swag is awesome. And thank you again. Thank you, directors, and we'll talk to you soon. See you in the Discord.
Bye.